Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to the talk. Another busy year at RCOM, and it's good to see you all at the London Show. This year, most of our focus has been on hardware and computers, with the RMX6 continuing to dominate sales, and the new time machine that we launched or we announced it at the London Show last year, with machines beginning to be available between the Southwest and the Wakefield Show this year. Between those two machines, we've been kept very, very busy indeed this year. There's still demand for the machines from the business audience, which keeps things ticking over very nicely, plus the consumer sales into the more traditional RISC OS scene. So very busy on the machine sales. I have an RMX6 here and a time machine example here. You can try both of them on the stand. We've got both of them wired up to monitors, so feel free to come by to the stand and actually have a try and hands-on with the new computers. With the two, you've got sort of two different specifications at different prices. The RMX6 continues to be extremely popular because it's sort of an all-round package at a reasonable price. It's not quite as flat out fast as the time machine, but it's hitting the sort of core notes that people want for a sort of Ionics replacement next-gen machine. As many of you know, the RMX6 was developed in conjunction with John Balance, formerly of Castle Technology, so that's why I call it the Ionics replacement, because of the DNA there. And indeed, John's classic joke was that if I wanted to call it an Ionics 2, I had his blessing. So the RMX6 provides the sort of all-round solution, broad range of software compatibility. You've got Angular and things to run the legacy software like Impression and Eureka and the like. And due to the way it handles colour in a very RISC OS friendly manner, you don't have any sort of quirks with sort of programs coming out in the wrong colours and things. It supports 256 colour mode, so you can run old 256 colour full screen, this, that and the other. So you've got a nice round package in the RMX6. The time machine is a little bit more state of the art. It's got sort of, probably sort of bump in speed by maybe 30-40%. Not quite as good on the graphics front. The RMX6 can do up to 4K. The time machine is limited to, well, officially 2048 by 2048. In practice, monitors tend to top out at 1920 by either 1080 or 1920 by 1200. So, you know, 4K, 1080, bit of a difference. That said, there is a second video output on the time machine, still in beta. So we tend not to sort of demonstrate that, but in due course it's hoped that that second video output on the time machine will be possible, so you can have two lower resolution screens rather than, whereas with the RMX6 you could have one lovely big screen, as you've probably seen in the hall. So horses for courses, and different people like different things. So you know, you've got king of the hill in terms of performance. You've got a more affordable all-round system that with excellent video capabilities. Also, the RMX6 offers audio over HDMI, which means that you can have basically cinema quality audio from your computer. It supports up to 192 kilohertz audio, which is effectively as high as digital audio goes, via the HDMI, multiple channels, etc., and can be linked up to a hi-fi system or what have you to get basically hi-fi grade audio that you know, sounds basically perfect if you put the right equipment through it. Because it just keeps the signal digital all the way through to your equipment, so the only time the audio actually gets messed with is when it goes out of your hi-fi to your speakers. So that's a very nice feature of the RMX6. Currently that isn't possible on the time machine, but as I say, your time machine gives you the raw performance, and the time machine can also drive multiple SATA SSDs. So you know, you could have a multi-drive SSD system with a time machine, whereas if we want to have multiple SSDs on the RMX6, some of them will run at a slower speed. We could do it, but you'll have top speed on the first drive, but your second drive will have a slight hit in performance. So, you know, different machines for different audiences. Our new announcement at this particular show is our new RISC Go. The RISC range is a range of what we call hybrid computers, which basically means you have both Microsoft and you have RISC OS. The beauty of the RISC Go is to offer a machine that is competitively priced, so they start at just £349, including VAT. This particular one is a 399 model with extra storage and various other bells and whistles. You can see that we have the RISC OS desktop running. It's too small probably to see it properly, but we can run a wide range of software on there, including classics like Sibelius or Impression and things like that, all quite happily. Performance isn't as high as a full-size machine. You can see it's fairly dinky, but also I couldn't just take a full-size laptop and just hold it in my hand like this. The beauty of the system is that you can run it for, well, they claim 10 to 12 hours on a single charge. And you can see that the display is top quality display. It's an 11.6 inch unit, which hits a nice balance between being large enough to use sensibly at a sensible resolution, but small enough that you could put it in your briefcase and easily carry it around. You have the latest Wi-Fi standards, including 5G. You have Bluetooth. You have the latest USB-C type, USB 3.1 C type, which can be used to connect to phones and things like that, as well as USB 3, USB 2, etc. There's a HDMI port for connecting to a projector or television, card reader, you name it. And all of those facilities can be taken advantage of by RISC OS as well as by Windows. Plus you have the compatibility element that when you're on the road with a device, you want a single computer that ticks all the boxes. So when we're at a hotel like this, we want our RISC OS, but we also know that we need to be able to browse with a modern web browser, and the Windows side allows for that kind of operation. And we can actually cut and paste information between the two, so we could be doing our email on RISC OS and cutting and pasting a web link from a Windows web browser into our email on the RISC OS. It also means that, for example, we can benefit from things like our Uniprint technology, so that any printer that you happen to have access to with your laptop, you can print directly to that printer, even by Wi-Fi, etc., from your RISC OS programs. All of which, to my mind, makes for a very tasty mobile package. And the idea is to try and utilise what we've learned over the years of doing RISC books in different flavours, to offer something that is a truly mobile thing. In the past, the other options were things like the netbooks, but we found that the netbooks tended to be a wee bit too small, a wee bit too dinky, a bit too much of a toy. We think this strikes the right balance between large enough to be genuinely useful, but small enough that I can still be holding this in my hand after a few minutes and not be sort of doing this too much. So yeah. Now, as well as being a nice little RISC OS machine, we can also flip it, at which point we have a system that can be used as a tablet PC. We can run RISC OS in that mode if we want, but to be honest with you, RISC OS is not very touch friendly. But you see, I can sort of run something like LibreOffice. I don't know how well this will come over to everybody, but I can bring up a touch keyboard. This demo was easier with a customer earlier. There we are. And so I can start typing away in my document at the top here. Zoom in using gestures and use it just like a tablet. And you'll notice that although I've got my key, I'm sort of pressing the keys in the background, it disables the keyboard when I'm using it in a tablet mode. So basically you have all the advantages of a tablet computer, nice display, high resolution, etc., coupled with the convenience of full laptop when you want to actually work on documents. Using a word processor to demonstrate touch was probably not the smartest of things, but hey, I don't claim to be a super demonstrator. You all know that I'm more at home with my gadgets than I am with my presentations. So yeah, basically RISC Go starts at 349 and is designed to tick the boxes of what we think people want from a truly mobile device right now. So that's we're obviously still offering the full-size laptops and the RISC cubes, so don't think we're not doing those are all still happening, but these are the new things. On the software front, I'll be honest that a number of our projects that we've been trying to get ready for the show have not materialised this year. These things happen. It was a bit of hair pulling this last week and disappointments, but c'est la vie. We have, however, new versions of Fireworks Professional and of our Messenger Pro for Windows, Linux and Mac, with new CDs available very cheaply at the show. It's £5 purchase for a new CD, assuming that you're semi-up to date on those products. On Fireworks, the big new feature is the inclusion of global clipboard support. So we can do cut and paste between applications. So if we go to Show Demo, the RComp, and Fireworks. And we can highlight a chunk of that, press Ctrl-C, and then trundle over to take Messenger Pro for example, and compose an email, and simply Ctrl-V, paste it straight into a Messenger Pro document. It goes the other way too, so you can receive information, drag and drop, cut and paste straight into Fireworks Pro. And that also includes between RISC OS and Windows applications. If you're using Uniprint, we can actually go and cut and paste directly from, say, the Windows web browser, Firefox, Chrome, something like that. Copy some information to the clipboard, paste it straight into a Fireworks document. Other new features include updates to compatibility with Microsoft Excel. Fireworks Pro does both import and export of Excel documents, and we've added yet more compatibility functions so that when you import a spreadsheet, it will transparently substitute compatibility functions, so that when you're working on it as a Fireworks spreadsheet, instead of using Fireworks' built-in functions, as it were, that may be slightly syntactically different to the Microsoft functions, it will use the compatibility functions, which are designed to be syntactically identical and functionally identical to the Microsoft or Open Document functions. And then when you save the document, it will automatically transpose between these and the Microsoft functions, so that basically your experience when you import formulae and things like this exactly matches what you would expect when you're opening those documents on a Microsoft Excel or LibreOffice spreadsheet or something like that when you load them into Fireworks. The other big change in the latest Fireworks is a move to a modular system, where previously Fireworks had everything sort of merged together into one big lump of data that you couldn't edit or change. The latest Fireworks, we've split all of those out into separate files. So for example, all the icons are now in a standard sprites file. So if you wanted to do your own icons, hey, knock yourself out, standard paint file, you can load it into Paint and make nicer icons. It supports themes, so if you're using the sort of theme options in boot, it will pick up on that and you can set up themes to match whatever themes you've customized your desktop with. An extension of this is that from all the English words and phrases and menus and things are now all in separate text files in there. So in a folder called UK, if you want to internationalize it, you've got partners in Germany, etc., can do a German version of Fireworks simply by translating the text in there. Going forward, we're looking at at the moment we've added support for enhanced cosmetic importing of Excel documents. So for example, if you load an Excel document in, latest Fireworks Pro will handle a lot of the cosmetic elements like fonts and colours and cell shading and all that kind of thing. The things that make a spreadsheet look a little bit sexy. As much as the word sexy can be used with a spreadsheet, I know, but that's handled by Fireworks. At the moment we don't have export of that particular feature, and that's the next thing that we're going to be working on, is allowing the cosmetic elements to be exported when you export the spreadsheets, so that you've got a complete two-way, open a spreadsheet, work on it, save it, and everything comes out perfect. So that's Fireworks Pro. With the Windows, Linux, Mac Messenger Pro, obviously you're familiar with the RISC OS email client. The Windows, Linux, Mac version has been ticking over in the background for some time, but went through a sort of hibernation period for about a year because the programmer got married, and what programmers do when they get married. Keep programming. Mark had a bit of time off. He's now done a few more updates this summer. Got ensured compatibility with the latest Windows 10, 32 and 64-bit, latest 64-bit Mac OS, and various of the latest flavours of Ubuntu. They seem to have new versions every 6 months, so it's always a race to keep up to date with them. So we have a new CD of Messenger Pro for Windows, Linux, Mac, which supports all the latest operating systems and has various fixes and improvements and what have you in there, which is available as a £5 new CD. We also have some nice monitors on the stand. The one on the end is marked down from £330 to £200 by virtue of some deals that we get from a very local company down the end of the street. They are the when this particular make of monitor, which is Benk, when the factory, when Benk have finished with demo monitors, they sell them off through this company down the end that happens to be down the end of the street. And so we're able to pick up the sort of ex-demo units, which are usually boxed as new, but for excellent prices. So we're able to offer a £330 screen for £200. That particular screen has some very interesting stuff for RISC OS users on it. You actually have 4 discrete inputs on the back. It has a resolution of 2560 by 1440, which is a really nice high resolution. 27-inch display. It's got an IPS panel, which is a top-of-the-line panel, but you still have a VGA connection, which means you can connect a RISC PC or an Ionix to it and get a display. Now, that's significant because VGA is getting hit on the head at the moment. It's end of life, game over for VGA, generally speaking, particularly in the higher end monitor market. So it's actually extremely difficult. It's almost Hobson's choice when it comes to getting VGA plus an IPS panel in a large size, because the assumption is that you're simply not going to use VGA anymore, because the latest Intel chipsets do not have VGA output capability in the chipset anymore unless a motherboard manufacturer buys extra chips to do that. So that's something that you're not going to see on monitors of that caliber in future, but it still does have that particular connection, as well as DVI, HDMI, and also the newer DisplayPort connection as well. So it really has you covered on all bases. There's built-in audio and a really nice picture, at a price that, hard to beat, I would suggest. So yeah, that's probably all I need to say. I'm sure there's lots of other things that we've been up to, and please do come and have a chat about all the different software products and things that we offer. Pricing on ARM X6s and time machines. Bit of a warning here. We've been seeing prices on components skyrocketing over the summer. Things that I was buying for £40 in June are now costing me sort of £75–80. Per machine, I'm looking at like £70 to £100 more expensive on each machine that we sell. So keeping the prices at the current levels is not exactly easy at the moment. I've got a certain amount of stock which I've built into machines for the show, so we can still offer the current pricing, and there's various sort of bonus things like the new bundle CD with 300 quid worth of software on and extra storage, etc. at this show. But once the current stock is gone, which I think I've got 2 ARM X6s and 1 titanium left, Once that's gone, I can't do any more deals like that for the foreseeable future. So if you came to me in the Southwest show and said, what's the best deal you can do? Well, I might still be able to hit the price, but with no extra bonuses, no extra storage, no extra, but even then it's going to be hard to actually hit those prices. We may well have to put the prices up. So if you are considering a machine, I would suggest walking away with it today. As I say, I came with quite reasonable stock. I'm down to 2 and 1. They're going fast. I just don't want folks to be disappointed when it comes. If you say, "Oh, I'll leave it till Southwest show," you come to the Southwest show and find that 699 has sort of turned into 749 or something. Advanced warning. That's the situation. I promise you, it's not us trying to hoik prices artificially. It's simply that the pound is hopeless against the dollar these days, and secondly, manufacturers have been artificially shortening the market for the last 7 or 8 months because it allows them to creep prices up. So they sort of say, oh well, when stocks are freely available, we'll see prices dropping by 10%. But of course, the stocks never become freely available, and pound shifts against the dollar, and oh, sorry, price has gone up by 10%. And as I said, that's across the market. I mean, even something like graphics cards, for example, Nvidia said, oh, our product's starting at 699, but we promise you ones will come available at sort of 499 and 599. No, they're still 699, 6 months later. So the prices are just high on things at the moment, so apologies for that, but we've just got the current stock at the current prices. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about any of our software or anything? Yes?
When you talk about Excel, are you talking about the XML files and the traditional ones, or only
our focus is primarily on the .doc file rather than the .docx, because that's what...
Still about spreadsheets?
Spreadsheets, sorry. So, same difference, it's .xls versus .xlsx. So it's easier to say doc and docx. Fewer X's. The focus is on the older format because that's still what most people seem to send and transmit. We don't see a lot of the XML versions. It's something that we will be looking at in due course, but the focus is on basically the older format is everything will read and write the older format. Not everything will read and write the newer format. Therefore, people tend to, where they're interchanging spreadsheets, they tend to use the older format by and large.
Depends whether they're intelligent. I'm getting increasingly because people don't know the difference.
Well, this is also true. Yeah, I mean that's why going forwards it would be good to do the other ones. That may well be Fireworks Pro 3, but yeah, I mean essentially the work that is done, because the XML versions are literally the same data just presented differently. It's one of those things where we've been encouraging the program to concentrate on functionality over formats, because we could say, oh well, it does XLSX, but if it doesn't handle the functions and formulas and doesn't do this, that and the other with it properly, then what's the point? So it's better to do a nice job and then add the XLSX than try and do too much and not do any of it at all sensibly. But good question.
Now, the reason I asked is that at the moment you can read XLS, there's a reader and you can say the CSV or whatever. But as far as I'm aware, there's no means in RISC OS of reading the XML file, unless you open it up and look at the components of the zip. But they're
right, okay. Yeah, I will mention it to the program as being perhaps a higher priority, but I try not to overload Stuart with too much stuff, because if you're not careful, I find that it's better with programmers to focus on one thing, get it done nicely. If you give some people too many things to do, yeah, things can end up muddy and messy, and it tends to work really well. So, gentleman in the blue shirt.
You mentioned open document format. So can it read ODP files and write?
I'm not. The answer is no, but I did mention it because when Stuart talks about the different functions, the functions he describes are ODF functions. So it's functionally compatible with ODF, but it does so using a .xls file structure. So basically, that would just be simply a case of writing an appropriate output filter to put it in a suitable ODF container. But the function, the reason I mention that is because when you open a document from another platform, you expect the formulas to work in a certain way that matches how it was created. Now, because Fireworks is a product that was originally developed in isolation on a RISC OS platform, functions don't necessarily work in exactly the same way. They might take different parameters, there might be different functions, they might work on a different range of values, they might generate accuracy differences. I know that Excel is somewhat infamous for not being overly accurate at times. So you may find an instance where the RISC OS thing is slightly more accurate on some functions than another one. Some of the more complex statistical functions, for example, I know that they may use. Sorry, I was once a mathematician. I'm now a computer person, and my knowledge of how some of the more complex statistical functions work was probably better 20 years ago than it is now. But some of them use computationally different methods of calculating statistical objects. I had a deep and meaningful discussion on this with a Dutch customer. You can imagine how the language worked here as fun and games, because he was interested in the actual detailed code of how a statistical function works, and writing his own version in Fireworks scripting language to shift its statistical relevance to sort of skew the. If you can imagine a statistical function working on this range of data, he wanted it really to work on this range of data really accurately, rather than on a wide range of data slightly less accurately. So my point, going back to the Microsoft thing, is that sometimes you find that a similar function will be mathematically different because it's of how it's designed, and the ranges and values and core function of the mathematics is designed to work. So the purpose of these functions are to transparently have functions that work exactly like the Windows equivalents, and that way when you load a spreadsheet in, you don't suddenly find all the mathematics going AWOL in the conversion process. Because if you converted it over straight to the Fireworks functions, you might find that you think you're using a similar statistical function, but your PC gives you one answer and Fireworks gives you another answer, and then if you use that in another calculation, you can compound the errors. You end up in a right mess. Yeah. So that's something like that, yes. Or your International Space Station crashes out of orbit. So that's what that's all about, and ensuring that things are accurate when that happens, which I think is a worthwhile improvement. So yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's not the most fantastically exciting upgrade. It is 2.20, but I think the global clipboard is a biggie, and new CD for a $5. I didn't think it was too unreasonable. I hope you guys agree. Any more questions? One more question, okay.
It was the titanium machine.
Yes.
You mentioned about the second video.
Yeah.
So will that only be the obviously test version moment? So will it just give the same resolution as the other one?
Right. I mean, I think that's really one for Rob Sproston and Jeffrey Lee, to be honest with you. I did ask Rob for more details before the show, because I did wonder whether he might be sort of behind the scenes scrabbling to get that done in time for. Bearing in mind his previous timescale, I could see the sort of target of the London show being in the background, but it hasn't progressed particularly. Although he does say that he and Jeffrey have battled out an API for it, so it is just a case of just writing the code. That may sound like a bit just, but there is a certain amount of ensuring things are done in the right way can be the biggest challenge with this kind of thing, because he's already proved the concept of it. If he and Jeffrey have agreed exactly how the video drivers and things are going to do it, then it's a case of just making sure that what's already written works in the way that he and Jeffrey have done. So sorting out exactly how things are going to be done is a big chunk of what has to be done. So it is something that is moving in the right direction, but is not happening quite as rapidly as the original press release might have made you think. As I say, we tend to cap off with just a simple plastic cap the second video so that people don't use it by accident, and it's certainly not a feature I would particularly, you know, if I'm talking to a customer, as you probably know, when I sell a computer, I like to sell it on what it does, not what it might do. Now I was doing a bit of that with the second video in the talk. I apologise for that, it's not usually how I do things. I usually say this is what it does, and a year later, we've done this because we've enabled this feature, because I think that's the right way to do it. Otherwise you're constantly being promised something that may or may not come about. And RISC OS folks have heard that too many times before. So that's why I normally say the second video is capped off, just treat it as a single video thing. In theory, I believe the API is supposed to support more flexibility on displays, but certainly the beta that's available at the moment, or alpha or whatever you want to call it, is limited to 2 screens of the same resolution, and is also a little bit flaky in terms of actually trying to get into those screen modes in the first place. You kind of have to switch into one mode, and then you kind of have to switch out into a second mode to get what you actually want. So it's a little bit crude at the moment. So that's why I'm saying it's not really there. But in theory, you can run 2 separate 1920 by whatever monitors with different contents on the screen, which I think was part of what you were saying, as a single extended desktop. So in other words, you could achieve the kind of resolution that I'm running the RMX6 at on the stand on one big screen with 2 separate smaller screens side by side. So that is possible. But as I say, it's somewhat crude at the moment, and therefore that's not something I would be particularly advertising. The other thing is, personally, and this is just Andrew's take on it, and I apologise this is in advance, not everybody agrees with me on this, but unless you're running an operating system that is very much aware of multiple monitors, you can get some really quirky things happening with 2 screens, because if you think about it, the centre point is the actual middle of the bezels. Now, if you think that a lot of programs open their windows in the middle of the screen, error box is in the middle of the screen. So unless you have a operating system that is kind of aware of how these screens work and knows that error boxes really ought to be on the middle of the primary screen, not the middle of the extended screen, a dual screen desktop can be more trouble than it's worth. Now I know some people absolutely swear by the thing, so I do know that there's different schools of thought on this, but me personally, I would rather have the single big display than 2 small screens, because it's just easier for me to cope with. Things just kind of work on a single big screen display. Okay, any other questions, or should we adjourn to the stand if people have more questions? I think we're done? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for listening.